Hello everyone, it's Ben Cope from Grappling Insider. Today I am joined by a ADCC Trials, two-time ADCC Trials champion. She's a combat jiu-jitsu champion and just generally one of the best black belt competitors in the world, Brianna-Ste. Brianna, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. So then going back a little bit, I want to talk about ADCC Trials, the West Coast Trials, that is. The first time I interviewed you, we talked about it, but it's still like, I don't think people understand how stacked that bracket was that you worked your way through. If I remember correctly, right, you had Raquel Canuto. I think you
Yeah.
had, did you have Tata then after that? And then in the finals, was it Rocha?
Yeah.
Okay. So a pretty incredible little run. Like, if you can sum it up, tell me like what went right for you that weekend.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, going into the event, like it can be like there were so many good names like registered. Like, that was like my side of the bracket. But on the other side, like, there was like Tammy Musamesi, there was Alex Enriquez, who I faced in the finals of the East Coast, Amanda Bruce, who's doing super well. And I'm sure like other names that I'm forgetting to even mention, but it can seem like really intimidating at first. And then I try to like, I have like little things I try to do. I get really nervous, obviously, when I compete. But they're just small things like reminding yourself, like, even though there's all these like crazy names signed up, like you're not going to have to face every single one in order to win,
Mhm.
and then just dealing it one match at a time. Like I really, like, I believe in my abilities and I think that I can win a match against anyone in the world. Obviously doesn't mean I will win. I just think I'm able to. So it's like, okay, if I take that, I'm able to win one match against anyone in the world. I believe that I can do that. So then I'm just going to focus one match at a time. I'm going to like, so I'm not going to think like, oh, like, for example, I fought Raquel Canuto in the quarterfinals. And to me, like, that could have easily been like a finals match, right? I've been watching her for years. She's amazing. She's a great athlete. And I was there like, okay, I can't believe I'm fighting her in the quarterfinals. And then most likely I'm going to be fighting Tata in the semis. Like,
Mhm.
usually if you beat Raquel Canuto, like that's good enough, but it's like, no, now you got to go face Tata and then someone else in the finals.
Mhm.
But then I just told myself, okay, like this is just a super fight. It's just me against Raquel, and like doesn't matter. Like I can lose the next one. Nothing else matters. Like just this one match. And then I think like fighting it one match at a time like helps me a lot. Yeah, to kind of deal with like what seems like an intimidating bracket. Like I just pretend that like the day is over after that match. Because in
Mhm.
the end, if you try to save yourself too for like future matches, like you're thinking like, okay, like I gotta like make sure I still have gas in the tank for the next one. Well, if you lose that match, there is no next one. So in reality, nothing does really matter except for that
Mhm.
match at the moment.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you had also mentioned the first time we spoke that you felt this kind of like pressure to do well at trials because that's your one shot, right? You have just this one chance to make ADCC. Does that pressure, does that exist for ADCC itself, or is it more like, well, I would have future years that I could maybe qualify for this?
I mean, I guess both, right? Like I don't know what's going to happen in the future. So I want to make the most of this opportunity, and I'm coming in there to try my best to win. Um, so it's like, that's it, it's who knows if I'm going to be back at ADCC. So I want to give everything I can for this ADCC. But that being said, of course, like win or lose, I'm going to be looking to compete at multiple events. Um, so there's definitely pressure. I mean, there's always pressure. Um, and obviously, if I were to do well at this ADCC, like that would mean a lot for me in terms of like my career as like a jiu-jitsu fighter and whatnot. Uh, but it's either way, I'm looking to do it multiple
Mhm.
times.
And you mentioned how like medaling or winning ADCC would mean a lot for your career, and I do want to talk about that. But in general, kind of this may be a difficult question to answer, but like, what does winning an ADCC title mean to you outside of like all these other obvious opportunities that it would create? Just like your own self-satisfaction, what does ADCC title mean to you?
I mean, I guess it's like I think about all the like sacrifices that you have to put in to compete. I think about like, all the injuries I've dealt with over the years, all the dieting I've done over the years, all the competitions that like, I've flown, on my own, like, my own money that I've saved up, working on the side, like going to go to these competitions, like sometimes with a team, sometimes by myself. And I think about all these like sacrifices were all so that like I would be ready to compete at the highest level. And now ADCC is that moment. And it's just kind of, it's just that feeling of like getting something, I guess, in return in a way for everything that you've put in, is just like the most incredible feeling. And I feel that in a smaller way every time I win, right? Like anytime I win, like an IBJJF, even an open or something, you know, it's like, okay, like it's like something you get back for everything that you've put in. And I do feel that like I put a lot in, and that's why I'm so emotional. If I, you know, win or lose, I get very emotional because I truly feel like I'm giving like every part of myself to do well at these events. So I guess it's something related to that.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the coolest things about jiu-jitsu is it being an individual sport. Like you get to see, it's not like if you're part of a soccer team or a football team and your team wins, right? There's might be a little part of you that's like, well, that was everybody else doing this. Whereas here, it's like it's just Brianna-Ste-Marie that
Yeah.
made all these sacrifices to earn these victories. So it's kind of cool. You also mentioned dieting, and I like to look at athletes' Instagram before I interview them, and you seem like you enjoy the junk food a little bit, or ice cream. So talk to me a little bit about that. Like, what are you missing right now in terms of dieting?
So I mean, I actually really like, I don't like junk food for sure. I love junk food. I just love food in general though. I really like to cook actually. And I find that like I lose some of that pleasure in cooking when I'm cutting weight because it's like, you know, you're not like, I love just like going like to the grocery store, picking out stuff that looks good and then making something really good out of it, not thinking like, I really don't like dieting. I don't like being restrictive in my eating. Like I live like a really like, you know, active lifestyle. And in general, I like to eat well. You know, I like to eat well. I like to enjoy things. Like I like to, you know, put butter on my bread. I like to like have ice cream after a meal. I don't think there's anything wrong with that as long as like, you know, I'm generally eating quite well. So I hate the idea that when you have like these like, you know, especially with the ADCC weight classes, like it's either you're below 132 or above 132. So for sure it's like, oh, well, just fight heavier. And it's like, well, I'd love to, but then maybe, okay, then I'm someone who weighs like, you know, around 140 pounds fighting someone who walks around 180 at like the highest level. So it's not very realistic. So it's kind of like, doesn't really give me much of an option in terms of like cutting the weight or not. And yeah, I just feel like it seems unhealthy, right? I'm an active individual. I feel like I should be able to fuel my body with like what it needs and not like restrict it. So that's something that I definitely like struggle with quite a bit, the weight cutting aspect of it. And I think too, like it can play into your mind. Like obviously I'm sure there's some people who are like able to kind of keep their head out of the water on that. But like I find sometimes it's, you know, it's almost like eating disorder season, right? Like I start to like obsess over everything that I eat, everything that goes into my body, like nothing about it kind of feels healthy to me. And then afterwards, you know, I try my best, but I end up just like binging, you know, for a couple months because it's like that your body was like starvation mode and your body's like, okay, like, you know, it's like I'll be full and I'll just keep eating. And anyway, so now I'm going into like weird story,
No,
but
no.
you know what I mean? Like I don't love that aspect of the sport. And I wish that there was more weight classes for women, especially, and I would happily move up a weight class, you know?
Yeah.
But right now I'll do at the same time, I'll do what's necessary. And like I said, that goes part into like, I'm ready to give whatever it takes for this opportunity. But obviously I would love it if I could just like, you know, be kind of myself at the weight that I am naturally, and feel like powerful and strong at that weight and not have to worry about like meeting these like weight classes.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I know I'm glad you brought it up because I know this is something you're kind of passionate about. Like, do you think this is the last year or hopefully one of the last years of only two women's divisions, only 8 women? Like, when do you think that's going to change?
It seems like I've seen some comments like made by Mo and made by like the ADCC page, I think, where they've mentioned that there should be another division for women at the next event, which is amazing. I wonder how it's going to play out. Like, I don't know if they're going to add that division like at the lower weights and keep the 60 kilo category and the above 60 kilo. I think like, you know, I feel that the opportunities like, I think they also need to like, honestly, I would say 2 more weight classes would be optimal, right? Because like I think that there's a lot less opportunity. There's less opportunity for women. And then I think there's even less opportunity for like heavier women. You know, if you look at like a lot of events, like even in mixed martial arts, a lot of the weight classes, like a lot of promotions, like have only weight classes up to like 125 pounds or 135 pounds. Well, like, what if you're walking around at like 170, you know? Or let's say if you look at ADCC, like kind of like a bit like my situation, but at least I'm able to cut that weight. But let's say someone who walks around at like 150, they either have to lose 20 pounds or be like 30 pounds lighter than the women who do really well in that weight class, you know? So I think that there definitely needs to be more opportunities for like heavier women. And then on the flip side as well, like if we're talking about specifically ADCC, well, then the lighter women too, you know, it's not great for them that they have to like accept a 20-pound weight disadvantage to fight at the 60 kilos. So yeah, so I think they're moving in the right direction, but ideally we would have a weight class added, you know, between 60 and 60 plus, and then also below 60.
Mm-hmm. And I assume also like you're hoping for a 16 woman bracket instead of just 8.
Yeah, again, like all these things, like ideally, you know, we have like 4 to 5 weight classes with 16 women a pop. We'll see what we get as the years go on there.
Yeah.
I mean, another weight class, maybe 16 people, 16 competitors a division would be like an excellent start.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's hard to say how things will play out.
And you know, maybe you don't have an answer for this, or maybe the answer is it just takes time, but like how does that change happen in jiu-jitsu? Because you know, if you go into typical schools, you are seeing more and more and more women, more like women only open mats, things like that. Like it's obviously growing in jiu-jitsu. How do you see those changes coming in jiu-jitsu where there's a little bit more like equality of opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I think like we're headed in the right direction in a way where like it used to be, and this still happens, don't get me wrong, but you know, you used to see like you'd have like a pro event and on the card there'd be like the one female fight, and it would feel a bit like, you know, they like threw us a bone, like, okay, here's the one match of the evening, you know, for the ladies type thing. And now you're seeing like more women's fights on the cards, and the women are kind of earning their spot too, right? Because a lot of times on these cards, like the women's fight gets the fight of the night, you know, it's the most exciting match. So I think like, you know, both sides have to be willing to kind of put in the work, right? The ladies, you got to show up at the tournaments as much as you can, support like, you know, local events, like kind of encourage each other to come out, you know, like, and we see that all the time, like, you know, where I'm from, like we'll have people like send other women from other gyms messages, be like, oh, I'm signing up for this weight class at this tournament, like, you know, like sign up and let's have a match, you know, and stuff like that. And the more we show up, the better things will get. And then vice versa though, like, you know, promoters have to like do their part and like give the space for the women. And like, you know, when you have like tournaments with like, for example, cash prizes, right? Say like, oh, if don't have it like, oh, the men get this and the women get this, say like, oh, how X number of competitors gets X amount of prize, you know, just like basically we gotta meet in the middle here, right? You can tell the ladies as much as you want, you gotta show up, but you also have to like give them the same incentives as the men are getting, right? So I think it's like, yeah, the work has to be done both ways. But I think that it's moving in the right direction. At least I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. So let's talk a little bit about actual ADCC, this bracket. You've probably been asked this before. Are there any in particular matches you're like looking forward to, or potential opponents where it's like, this really gets me going?
Yeah, I mean, like kind of similar to like what we discussed last time, like each competitor in that division kind of brings like a different, like, you know, they're strong in a different way type thing, right? So it's like presents a different challenge. And then because I've never fought any of these women before, it's like I'm kind of excited for any potential matchup that I could have, because they're all women that I've been like dreaming of getting the opportunity to test myself against.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what fighting any of them would be like, you know, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely excited for any match, and you know, they all have their different strengths. So I don't think there's no way that this bracket is not going to line up in some sort of exciting fashion.
Yeah, I'm pumped. Now, do you think from my perspective, you have a pretty like ADCC friendly style of jiu-jitsu, good wrestling, great positional control, guard passing, things of that nature. And I'm curious, like, is that on purpose? In other words, are you kind of molding your style around success in ADCC, or is that just how it happened?
I think it started off, it's kind of how it happened, like, and then now obviously I'm doing my best to tailor like my game to like an ADCC friendly like kind of style. But I mean, initially, like I actually like, ADCC definitely favors, I think, like someone who's going to try to like stay on top, right? If you take top position by taking the person down, and then your ability to kind of stay on top and whatnot, and get top pins, obviously, like, so if you're, too loose with your passing, the person can always turtle and kind of like, and then if they have a good turtle defense, and then you never kind of, it can be really difficult to score points essentially in ADCC, right? So I think that like it started off, honestly, like me liking to play on top was because a lot of time I would go to tournaments, and like most of the women in my division at like the lighter weight classes, it'd be like a double guard pull, and I would see women like almost go to the point of disqualification because like they would double guard pull, 20 seconds would go by, ref would stand them back up, penalty. And then I just thought to myself, like, oh, I like to play guard, but it seems that not many people here like to pass. So maybe if I just get really good at passing and like, top pressure and whatnot, then that'll be an advantage for me. And then I think that then going later on, going into like ADCC style rule sets, that kind of mentality has maybe helped me, like, being able to stay on top, being able to get some like good top pins, scoring points in that rule set and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah. And are you still doing wrestling specific trade? Like, if I understand it correctly, you're doing wrestling at a wrestling club, not in as part of your jiu-jitsu classes.
Yeah, so I've been lucky enough to wrestle with some like really amazing female wrestlers. Montreal has like a really big like club there where a lot of like the aspiring Olympians go train. So that's really great because you get exposed to that level of wrestling, and you realize, like, it puts you in your place real fast. And then at the same time, when you then go against someone who is only doing like kind of like wrestling, once a week in a jiu-jitsu class, and it's like, you learn a couple techniques and whatnot, like you do feel that advantage,
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I think that there's like kind of a movement where people are incorporating like the stand, like I feel like at the beginning of my jiu-jitsu career, there was a much less of a focus on like the standing part of the game, and now I feel like it's going more mainstream, and a lot of people are working on the wrestling. So I'm sure I'm not the only one who's kind of investing the time into this, but it is something that is very useful on the jiu-jitsu mats. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's really all I had for you today. Before I let you go, is there anything else, like any sponsors? Where can we follow you on social media? All that good stuff.
Yeah, sure. So always want to shout out my sponsors, Hyperfly. Actually, it doesn't say Hyperfly, but this is a Hyperfly shirt. Hyperfly, who's been with me for the past, I think, year and a half, and they've been absolutely great. And then my new sponsor, Roll Forever. Shout out to Betty. She does so much for jiu-jitsu athletes and helping them follow their dreams. And I'm so happy to be working with such a great brand. And then, my usual team of, I've actually, Lex Start too is a law firm that's kind of sponsored me throughout this ADCC camp. Not kind of, they have. And they've allowed me to be training full-time in preparation for ADCC. So I can't thank them enough. And then, my strength and conditioning coach, Mathieu, who's been helping me for years now. My physio, Mentum, thank you guys. And you guys can follow me on Instagram at Brianna-SM. And I for sure forgot some people, and I'm going to feel really ashamed after. So I'm sorry if I didn't continue.
That's okay. No big deal. All right. Well, thanks so much, Brianna. I certainly look forward to seeing you compete. Thanks again.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.